What can drive a Space Marine to rebel against everything they believe in? The Adeptus Astartes are bred to be the ultimate warriors of mankind, shining beacons of power, authority, and war. And yet over the long millennium of the age of the Imperium, dozens of chapters have fallen into rebellion and heresy. For to be a Space Marine is also to accept centuries of burdensome toil and unrelenting discipline. The Astartes are more than human, yet also part of humanity. They have humanity's drive for freedom and dominion over one's thoughts and actions. Even a Space Marine can feel the wear and pain of centuries or millennia of restraint. Rules and guidelines put into place to steer humans away from evil can morph into harsh, iron bars, shuddering strength. The mighty supermen can be consumed with pride, jealousy, and wrath. Or can a chapter turn to evil in the name of the good they hope to serve? If they see the Imperium and its rules as blockades in the path they need to take for ultimate victory, the chapter may begin to see the Emperor's servants as enemies. Twisted into a mirror image of themselves, they embrace chaos and anarchy. One such group was known as the Fire Claws. The Fire Claws, as they were originally known, were created to form part of the Adeptus Praesus, a secretive movement during the Age of Apostasy when the Imperial government birthed and charged 20 newly formed Space Marine chapters to stand guard around the Eye of Terror, the opening into the hellish realm of the Warp. The Praesus have the most difficult job in the entire Imperial military structure, and countless lives have been lost to demonic incursions and rebellions. The gene seed of the Fire Claws was taken from the Dark Angels, a chapter long since forbidden from providing the basis of new chapters. Considering the fate of the Fire Claws, it seems wise to continue that ban to avoid outbreaks of chaos. But at first nothing appeared wrong with the stalwart defenders of man. The Fire Claws' homeworld is the planet of Torva Minoris. Torva Minoris, called Nutra by its natives, is a feral world of savage beasts and savage men. A life dominated by hunting, raiding, and brutality has easily produced excellent recruits into the chapter. The people of Nutra look at the Space Marines as divine servants of the Emperor who wield holy artifacts and must be superstitiously obeyed at any cost. In the 41st millennium, the chapter master of the Relictors is Articus Bardane, the son of a barbaric war chief. His life was spent plundering nearby tribes and slaying any who opposed him, giving the future commander an overbearing arrogance about his abilities and power. High above Nutra in geostationary orbit is the Ramillies-class star fort the Fire Claws called home. Though appearing normal on the surface, a close look at the fortress monastery would yield some disturbing hints of deviation. The great space station is said to be shrouded in a tenebrous atmosphere. Robed chapter serfs and gloomy-faced Astartes stalk the halls contemplating forbidden lore. Deep within the bowels of the space station, aspiring battle brothers are locked in grim cells and forced to translate ancient texts of mysterious origin. At the very heart of the Void Fortress lay adamantine doors covered in force shields that yet exude an aura of malevolence. The chapter was founded in the 36th millennium, and at that time, the Fire Claws' home sector was awash in chaos storms. So many swept through the system that regular massacres of deviants and mutants take place to this day, thousands of years later. The Fire Claws' fortress monastery itself may even have come very close to a warp storm for a time. For many thousands of years, the chapter seemed much like any other. 10 companies of sturdy, fanatical warriors for the Emperor. Although the chapter possessed many more librarians than is considered normal, they spent much time with the arcane arts and study of demons. It all seemed normal considering that's what they were charged to do as part of the Adeptus Praesus. They fought in battles, raids, crusades, and earned hundreds of citations and imperial records for bravery and sacrifice. They took war to all the enemies of mankind, including chaos, again and again. But after so much suffering and sacrifice for mankind, after so many centuries, in the middle of the 41st millennium, the path of darkness opened before them. Following advice from the prophetic Emperor's Tarot, the Fire Claws mobilized to intercept a space hulk known as the Captor of Sin. After disabling the ship, a Fire Claws Terminator squad led by the chapter's librarian Decario boarded the crippled vessel. They discovered the inhabitants were Chaos Space Marines of Tzeentch, Lord of Change. Furious shipboard combat followed as bolters roared across tiny corridors, and chainswords tore through power armor and dying artificial light. Eventually, the traitor Astartes were pushed back deep inside the Hulk's gargantuan engine room. Victory seemed near as the traitors fell one after another. But Chaos was far from defeated. The leader of the Chaos Marines revealed himself to be a Chaos champion known as the Excoriator. This champion of evil was so powerful he ripped through multiple Terminators with ease and pressed his attack upon Decario. The Librarian used all of his might to rain down terrible blows with his Force Sword upon the Champion of Change. His weapon glanced off the infernal Chaos armor harmlessly. All seemed lost until the story takes an unexpected turn. Along with the Space Marines had come a member of the Inquisition, an elusive figure known as Inquisitor Demarche. Demarche's past is opaque to anyone outside of the privileged ranks of the Ordo Hereticus, but must have been full of corruption and unholy ideas. Why Demarche was there with them that day and whether it was part of a broader plot of his is lost to time. In the last moments of the battle, Inquisitor Demarche was able to distract the Demon Champion long enough for Decario to use his Power Fist to tear away the traitor's sword in the arm that was holding it. In a flash, Decario seized the demon sword and laid into his opponent, rending great gaps in the unholy armor and killing his foe. The sword of the Excoriator was not merely a weapon, but a terrible artifact in which was bound the soul of a demon. The demon within gave the sword blasphemous power, and that power called out to Decario's mind and soul as he held the weapon. Inquisitor Demarche quickly seized the corrupted blade and demanded they return home. Over the next weeks and months, the rogue Inquisitor convinced the Fireclaws to embrace the heretical philosophy of Xanthism. Xanthites are radical Inquisitors who believe that chaos is a force to be harnessed, rather than an abomination to be destroyed. One of the roles of the Inquisition is to study chaos and learn about its fell might and sorcerous powers. This has led some to believe that chaos is merely a force in the universe like any other and must be bent to mankind's will and harnessed for its benefit. Chaos is still the most potent enemy of mankind, and the Imperium already utilizes warp-tinged creatures like Psychers, Librarians, and Navigators. And perhaps the Fireclaws, because they were part of the Adeptus Praesos, had researched and looked into chaos and demons many times in the past. We need all of those forces to continue the very existence of the Imperium. So perhaps the answer to finally conquer Hell is to wield the powers of Hell against itself. Needless to say, this is a slippery slope that can lead to the most severe heresy imaginable. Puritanical Inquisitors are ever looking for corruption and deviation from their more rebellious kin. Flush with tales of seizing victory from the jaws of defeat with the aid of a demon weapon and with the Inquisitors' whispers in their ears, the Fireclaws decided to embrace the dark practice. Henceforth, the Fireclaws would be known as the Relictors. In High Gothic, the language of the Imperium, relictor or relictus means abandoned, forlorn, or relinquished. Were the Fireclaws saying that they were relinquishing their love of the Emperor or his laws? Or were they saying they felt themselves the abandoned and forgotten in an increasingly bleak future, with no way to defend themselves from demons? The Relictors were charged by the High Lords of Terra to be a permanent guardian against demonic invasion, to war ever against the vile protean hordes of chaos creatures. And yet how would they do such a thing when their weapons were ineffective? We don't know how many times in the past the Fireclaws were faced with impossible odds against demons, and suffered horribly, how many battle brothers were lost, how much they flirted with the line of crossing over into outright chaos in the millennium it took for them to finally break with the Imperium. How could they be expected to defend the Emperor when chaos was so obviously powerful? The only way to serve the Emperor was by disobeying him. Any way the Relictors looked at things, they were oathbreakers. Perhaps the new name signified their giving up the ancient strictures so they could embrace victory over their implacable foe. Whatever the meaning, the Relictors set about their new task with zeal, tracking down every piece of demonic technology, lore, and weaponry they could lay their hands on. They spent decades scouring the warp-tainted Segmentum Obscurus, home of the Eye of Terror, for armor and weapons with demonic powers. The chapter's command structure was reorganized to include a mysterious group known as the Conclave. The Conclave consisted of the oldest and wisest battle brothers who have accepted the radical teachings of using the powers of chaos. Space Marines of the greatest trustworthiness and fortitude are slowly initiated into the Conclave and its secrets. After years of preparation, the prospective Conclave member is told about Xanthism, and taught how to use the mighty chaos artifacts stored under lock and key. Artifacts such as the Arcticus Scourge, a flail with energy balls in the shape of screaming demonic faces, or the Book of Pain, a dark tome containing every word ever used to describe sensations of agony. Reading from the book causes enemies to suffer torturous misery from invisible energies. Only if members of the Conclave take the field of battle did anything seem amiss about the Relictors. Then the fearsome, unholy energies used by the Marines are brought to bear and explode with demoniacal fury. At first, under Inquisitor Demarche's guidance, the Relictors used their evil weaponry with great care. Fasting, meditation, and strictness attended every use of the vile warp swords and demon-infested tomes. After every use, the Marines would seclude themselves from their brothers with great solemnity, and remove any echo of hellish energy that could remain to taint them. The chapter's motto is strength of will, courage of will, so perhaps they felt the sheer force of their minds could hold off the baleful influence of the warp. But how much the minds and even souls of the Conclave were altered at this time is unknown. Their activities were finally noticed by the Inquisition, and a task force including 4 full chapters of Space Marines were sent to the Relictors' Star Fort to confront them. Faced with annihilation if they resisted, the Relictors submitted themselves to inquisitorial judgment. All of the Chaos artifacts were seized and the Battle Brothers severely censured. The Inquisition arrested the radical Demarche and dragged him off to his execution. Strangely, the downfall of the Relictors was brought about by the temptations of an Inquisitor, and yet they were punished by more Puritan elements of the same organization. The Relictors were ordered to atone for their vile acts of heresy with a century-long penitent crusade. During that crusade, the Relictors were denied access to their homeworld of Nutra, and were forced to recruit brothers from other worlds. The primitive natives of Nutra are horrified that the godlike beings who watched over them for so long have vanished. The world is increasingly gripped with warped-tinged practices and sacrifices that threaten to boil over into outright heresy at any moment. During their crusade, the Relictors displayed little outward sign of shame or penitence. They garnered a reputation for selfishness and were ever under a cloud of suspicion. The Conclave directed their brothers to only intervene in conflicts when it would benefit them personally in some way, and the chapter found itself near warp-shrouded events and worlds again and again. Were they eager to continue to fight demons with even greater fury, or were they just following where demon weapons were going so they could gain more chaotic evil power? Some inquisitorial groups and bases were even mysteriously destroyed when the chapter was nearby. Nothing was ever proven, and the chapter continued to hunt and destroy the Emperor's foes, so no action was taken. Until the Third War for Armageddon. The Relictors volunteered to join the gathering Imperial forces around the hive world of Armageddon in the year 998 Millennium 41. A massive conflagration was taking place against the vile green-skinned hordes of warlord Ghazghkull Thraka that threatened to overwhelm the planet and its billions of citizens. When they arrived, however, the Relictors disobeyed orders from any authority and vanished into the steaming jungles around the equator. The haunted rainforest held feral orc cultists that worshipped a bizarre and evil pyramid called Angron's Monolith. The chapter refused any orders even from the Lord Commander of the Blood Angels to assist other forces, and incurred the wrath of nearly every commander in the field for their intransigence. What took place in the gloom underneath the jungle canopy is unknown, but rumors persist of guardsmen driven mad if they wandered too far into the forest, and psychers claimed hideous energies were altering the materium itself around the area of Angron's Monolith. Angron is the Primarch of the World Eaters, a traitor legion from the dark days of the Horus Heresy. The arch-traitor Angron began the First War of Armageddon centuries before and was banished into the warp soon after. What evil legacy Angron left there is mysterious, for the entire area surrounding it was declared purgatus by the authorities. What the Relictors did there is even more mysterious. After months of fighting, the initial phase of the war for Armageddon reached a standstill. Many of the Space Marine legions withdrew from the planet, including the Relictors. The chapter was so brusque to the Imperial Navy that they were almost blasted from the void, but the days were numbered for the Relictors. The rumors of their activities were so numerous and their actions made them so despised that multiple Imperial groups were watching them closely. Eventually, the chapter's most powerful librarian had a dream, a vision of a great red, lidless eye weeping blood. Taking it as a sign, the chapter left immediately for the Eye of Terror. Near the Eye of Terror, the chapter escalated their violent actions, even storming and destroying an outpost of Inquisitors who were guarding a blasphemous artifact they wanted to steal. In 999 Millennium 41, the Relictors arrived at the Cadian Gate, and volunteered their entire chapter to defend humanity against the oncoming 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler. Once again, the chapter resisted all authority and pursued their own goals and needs. The Inquisition had taken all it could, and after personally observing the Relictors using banned Chaos weaponry, the entire chapter was declared excommunicate traitors. The Relictors fled from Cadia, but were tracked down and almost annihilated by a massive strike force of Grey Knights. The few Relictors that escaped number no more than 300. They left in what meager vessels they could and are believed to be hiding deep within the Eye of Terror. The Relictors served the Emperor and his people for 4,000 years. Even the great cogitators of Mars could not count how many battles they fought, how many enemies they slew, or how many acts of bravery and heroism they performed. All gone now. All 4,000 years of history, merit, bravery, loyalty, and faith have been erased, purged by the Inquisition from Imperial databanks. The Relictors are no longer even a memory. But even in the blackest position they could be in, the chapter survives. They fight on deep within Chaos territory. But for who they fight is as mysterious as the chapter themselves. Have they finally turned completely to evil and begun worshipping the Chaos gods? Or are they a renegade chapter taking the field in the direst circumstances imaginable to turn the weapons of the enemy against them? Still loyal to the Emperor and to humanity, but unwilling to obey anyone. Though declared treasonous, the Relictors may be far more dedicated to their oaths than even other Space Marines. They are one of a very few band of Astartes willing to renounce the laws of the Imperium and damn themselves to the warp in order to bring final victory over Hell. To storm the gates and end the wretched stalemate that has been going on for so many thousands of years in the only way they know how, by using the weapons of the enemy against them. The Relictors, whatever their fate, had a glorious history in the service of mankind that has now been ruined. To other men and other Space Marine, the Relictors are no more than despicable traitors if they're remembered at all. But for the abandoned chapter, the relinquished chapter, the forgotten chapter, they are at least no one's slave, no one's servant, and can hold their heads high knowing no one, not even the Emperor, can call them their master.